Hey guys, this is Bear Loves Film, I'm Bear Clark, and this is a quick review of the remake for Friday the 13th. This 2009 horror remake is one of a number that have come out over the last few years where we've seen things like Nightmare on Elm Street being remade with dubious success, shall I say. But this takes us back to the very beginning. This is basically a reboot, if you will, or reimagining, depending on which language you want to use, of the original film, but taken probably from film 2 onwards. So if you're aware of the first Jason Voorhees film, basically Camp Crystal is stalked by someone who butchers all of the camp supervisors there as a revenge for the fact that in previous years a young boy drowned there because of lack of supervision. It turns out in the end of the film that that's actually the mother of the child that's actually doing the slayings. We see her killed, and then at the end of the very first Jason film we see Jason rise from his watery grave and take over the final survivor from the first film in what was actually a very, very well done and shocking ending at the time. So this film has us basically seeing the final confrontation between the mum and a survivor. At the end of the first Camp Crystal massacres, the mum is beheaded, and we fast forward to a number of years later on, where we find that basically we have the normal sort of hapless bunch of campers straight into the area around Camp Crystal that's been deserted ever since those initial murders. They do the entire trope of telling each other around the fireside about the story of Jason and the fact that he murders people in revenge for the fact that he saw his mum being beheaded, for instance. Obviously they come to a grisly end, ingenious end I should say, but ends nevertheless, apart from one girl who bears an uncanny resemblance to a picture that is held in a locket which is found in Jason's bedroom. It's never told whether this is his mother as a younger woman or a sister or sibling. We're never quite told that, but basically this woman is kept alive because Jason somehow identifies her with somebody that he cared about in the past or as a child. Fast forward 6 weeks later, we have her brother arrive on a motorbike to search the area, bumps into the new batch of visitors to the area, which is basically a bunch of supposedly high school sort of kids, sort of 18, 19, 20-year-olds, whatever, with a rich arsehole of a friend who's got a lake house right on Crystal Lake. And there continues the usual sort of thing where you expect, where people do very, very stupid things. Now, horror films get a bad rap from critics. It annoys me sometimes when a lot of critics snub their nose at horror films. You know, you don't see horror films nominated for awards or Oscars, apart from when there's a little bit of perhaps virtue signalling going on by putting Get Out up for awards. So they get a bad rap, but you have to understand what horror films are. You know, they have usually a fairly basic storyline. You know, a number of people will be killed. You generally, the viewers of horror films want to see those kills in new and imaginative type of ways. So if you understand that and you go into a horror film, then you shouldn't be too displeased. However, there's ways to make a good film, you know, like The Conjuring, for instance, or The Ring, the original Ring, and there's ways to make bad films. Now, this isn't by far the worst horror film I've ever seen, but it's quite a poor remake. They had the chance to make their characters be a little bit smarter than the normal cliches, but they don't. You know, somebody wanders off on their own to have a pee and get slaughtered. Somebody has to fix something, they have to go down to the boathouse or the shed on their own and get slaughtered. Somebody hears and gets slaughtered, so somebody on their own goes out to investigate and gets slaughtered, and so on. The film is very formulaic. We're pretty certain very early on just who's going to live and who's not going to live. So basically, the brother and sister survive to the end. They have the final showdown with Jason, where he is speared right through his body, right through his heart with his massive machete. And then, for some reason, we don't know why, the final frame shows that they've carried his body to the side of the lake, and they push it over into the lake, throw in his hockey mask and throw in the locket. And then just before we get the final frame, the final director's credits come up, the floorboards of the the decking out into the water, explode from underneath as Jason appears, grabs hold of the sister and pulls her down into the water, and that's the final cut. So they try and get the same sort of effect that happened in the original Jason film, but it has none of the effect. It has none of the shock value, and some of the framing of the shots are really quite poor. The grizzle effects are reasonable, but there's one particular one where there is a woman that's hiding underneath some floorboards, and basically she gets speared through the top of the head by Jason with his machete. And whether it's the special effects, whether it's the expression on her face when she dies, whether it's the angle of the camera, I'm not quite sure, but put it all together and it is a laugh out loud moment. And this film is obviously trying to take itself seriously and fails. It would have done better to have accepted what it was, given a little wink to the character, to the audience, and had a little joke, turned some of the cliches on their head and made for a more enjoyable film. So it's notable that this film, I don't believe, has had a follow-up. In fact, last I heard they're talking about rebooting again the Jason and Freddy Krueger franchises. I mean, I watched it on Friday the 13th last night. Actually, I rewatched it, and it's okay for what it is, but it's a pretty dire film. It breaks no new ground rather. The cinematography is quite poor. The use of the lighting effects at night are reasonable but could have been better. None of the characters are likeable. You literally want all of them to be sliced and diced. There's no real reason that most people would want to buy this for a DVD to put in their horror collection unless they're an avid collector of every single film in the Jason franchise. So unless you want something to switch your brain off and have a few bevies with the mates on a Friday night, this isn't a film I'd recommend, guys. So for me, it definitely gets a D. So don't forget to like the video if it was helpful to you, and please subscribe if you can, because I produce new videos every week and it'd be great to see you there. So until next time, I'll see you again.